I woke up to the soft hum of the city outside my apartment window. The morning light filtered through thin curtains, casting long, pale stripes across the wooden floor. I had barely slept, my thoughts tangled with the news from yesterday. Mom's diagnosis lingered in my mind like a cold shadow I couldn't shake. I made coffee, hands trembling slightly. The steam rose in slow spirals, carrying the familiar scent that always reminded me of her kitchen. I remembered her laughter when I burned toast as a kid, her soft scolding, the way she'd ruffle my hair. The apartment felt emptier than usual. I glanced at the photos on the shelf. Mom, Dad, and me smiling at the beach last summer. A small pang of guilt hit me. I hadn't called enough, hadn't visited as often as I should. Life had pulled me away with work, responsibilities, and the constant pressure of moving forward. I stared out the window, the streets below already filling with people rushing somewhere, unaware of the quiet battles happening inside their own homes. I wondered if Dad had already called the doctor, if Mom was holding back tears so I wouldn't worry. I wished I could be stronger, more present, more everything she deserved. My phone buzzed. A message from my friend, James, popped up. "Hey, how's everything?" it read. I typed back quickly, words stiff and clumsy. "Not good. Mom's sick." Then I put the phone down, wishing I could erase the heaviness in my chest. I remembered the last time I had really seen her. She smiled, masking the fatigue that had been creeping into her eyes. I had hugged her, said I loved her, and left thinking it was enough. Now I realized that love needed more than words. It needed presence, patience, understanding. The memory of her voice calling me for dinner, laughing at some trivial story Dad had told, echoed in my mind. I felt a sharp ache, a reminder of time lost. I thought about the days I'd spent abroad, thinking distance was harmless. But now, distance had become a heavier weight than I'd imagined. I tried to focus on work, on the small tasks that could distract me. Emails, reports, meaningless data, it all blurred together. I stared at my computer screen and then back at the photos. It was impossible to ignore what mattered most. Finally, I grabbed my coat and keys, deciding I couldn't wait any longer. The taxi ride to the hospital was quiet, filled with my thoughts and the soft hum of traffic. I rehearsed what I would say, but every word felt inadequate. Nothing seemed enough. When I arrived, the sterile smell hit me immediately. The fluorescent lights made the corridors feel colder, more unforgiving. I walked toward the oncology wing, each step heavy with dread. I wondered how she would react when she saw me. Would she hide behind her usual strength, or would she let herself feel? I found her sitting by the window, sunlight pooling across her frail shoulders. She looked up, surprised but relieved. "Hey," she said softly, forcing a smile. I swallowed hard, unable to meet her eyes for more than a moment. We sat together in silence for a long time. The machines beeped gently in the background, marking the rhythm of our lives in small, constant ways. I reached for her hand, noticing how thin it had become. She squeezed back, quietly acknowledging the worry I'd tried to hide. I felt the weight of unspoken words pressing on me. How many moments had I missed? How many days had I thought there would always be time? Now, time felt fragile, slipping through my fingers like sand. The nurse came by, checking vitals and leaving quietly. It was just us then, mother and son, suspended in the fragile bubble of reality. I wanted to speak, to fill the silence with something meaningful. But all I could do was sit, holding her hand, feeling the warmth and the fear, the love and the helplessness. I realized that love was not about fixing things, not about grand gestures. It was about being there, even when nothing could change the world outside that room. Her eyes met mine, soft and knowing, and I understood that this was enough for now. Presence was the gift I could offer, fragile as it might be. The city hummed beyond the window, indifferent to our quiet struggle. And yet, inside, a small flame of connection flickered between us. It was tentative, fragile, but real. I promised myself I would not let it fade again. The next morning, I returned to the apartment with groceries and takeout. Mom had insisted she didn't need help, but I could see the fatigue in her movements. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I unpacked the bags quietly, sensing the tension that had grown between us. Dad had stayed home from work, pacing the living room floor. He avoided my gaze, as if confronting our fear head-on was unbearable. The silence was heavy, filled with all the words we refused to say. I remembered our childhood dinners, where laughter had filled these same walls. Now, every sound seemed measured, careful, fragile. I tried to cook something simple, hoping it would bring comfort. Mom watched me, occasionally offering advice in that soft, precise tone she always had. I smiled and nodded, but I felt clumsy in this domestic ritual. I realized how much of her care I had taken for granted over the years. After dinner, we sat together, the glow of the table lamp casting warm shadows. I asked her about her day, her appointments, her thoughts. She hesitated, choosing words with care. Her answers were brief, careful, but I sensed the storm beneath her calm exterior. I wanted to reach out, to soothe her anxiety, but I felt powerless. Dad left for the evening, claiming work would keep him busy. I watched him go, wondering if he was hiding fear behind that stoic mask. Mom and I remained, sitting together in quiet. I touched her hand, noticing the subtle tremor in her fingers. She didn't flinch. Instead, she held on a little tighter, anchoring herself in our connection. The night stretched on, filled with small, careful conversations. I asked her about memories from my childhood, and she shared them with gentle humor. For a moment, it felt like old times, but the weight of illness lingered, unspoken yet ever present. I realized how little time we truly had, and it terrified me. The next few days blurred together doctor visits, phone calls, and small domestic routines. I learned to balance work with being present, even if my mind raced with other concerns. Mom appreciated the small gestures, a cup of tea, a blanket draped over her shoulders, a quiet evening together. I found that presence mattered more than perfection. Just being there, listening, acknowledging, comforting. One afternoon, I noticed Mom staring out the window at the city below. She didn't speak, but I felt the weight of her thoughts. I sat beside her, offering silent companionship, letting her feelings exist without interruption. She leaned on me slightly, and I felt a flicker of relief. Maybe I could do this, Maybe we could face it together. James called again, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. I declined gently, explaining why I couldn't leave. He understood. I appreciated his understanding, knowing that even friendships required adjustments in times like these. Life had a way of reminding you what truly mattered. At night, when the apartment was quiet, I thought about our family history. The ways my parents had always been the quiet pillars of strength, even when they faltered. Mom's current struggle wasn't weakness. It was human, inevitable, and deeply emotional. I resolved to be her anchor, even if it meant confronting my own fears. I realized responsibility was more than duty. It was love expressed in action. We began to settle into a rhythm, a delicate dance of care, patience, and observation. I learned the nuances of her moods, when to speak, when to remain silent, when to offer comfort without words. We laughed occasionally, softly, almost as a relief from the tension. Those small moments became precious, fleeting sparks in a challenging reality. I felt myself changing, growing into a role I hadn't anticipated but embraced fully. I found moments of reflection in the late hours. Sitting by the window, I looked at the city lights and contemplated time, mortality, and love. I understood that some things couldn't be fixed with words or gestures alone. They required presence, patience, and acceptance. And slowly, I began to internalize what it meant to truly care. Mom rested more those evenings, and I remained close, reading, talking softly, or simply sitting. The quiet became a shared space, comforting in its own way. The apartment, once filled with routine, became a cocoon of delicate connection, and I realized that even in uncertainty, there was space for hope. Hope didn't erase fear, but it gave us a reason to endure. I began writing letters to her not to send, but to organize my thoughts, my regrets, my love. I read fragments aloud sometimes, watching her listen with that quiet attentiveness. She never judged, never criticized. She simply absorbed the emotion. Those moments became our unspoken therapy, a bridge across years of distance, misunderstanding, and pretense. I felt fragile, but alive in a way I hadn't before. One morning, I woke to the sound of Mom coughing sharply. I rushed to her side, heart pounding with sudden fear. She waved me off, insisting she was fine, but I knew better. The reality of her illness struck harder than ever before. I called Dad immediately, and he promised to be home early. When he arrived, the tension was palpable, each of us afraid to speak too loudly. We sat together in the kitchen, trying to appear calm, though our eyes betrayed our worry. Mom's face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly as she held her coffee cup. Later, I accompanied her to a routine checkup, sitting silently in the sterile waiting room. I watched her fidget with the edge of her sleeve, anxiety etched in every motion. The doctor's words were clinical, but to me, they carried a heavy weight. Mom nodded along politely, absorbing each sentence without revealing her inner turmoil. Returning home, we found James sitting in the living room, having come to check on us. His calm presence offered a momentary reprieve from the constant tension. We spoke quietly, discussing everyday matters, though the underlying worry remained unspoken. I realized that even simple conversations had become exercises in careful navigation. That night, I made tea and sat beside Mom in her favorite chair. We spoke about small memories from my childhood, trying to distract ourselves from the looming reality. She laughed softly at a forgotten anecdote about Dad's clumsiness, and for a moment, the room felt lighter. But the laughter faded quickly, replaced by a heavy silence that neither of us could break. The following days were a blur of hospital visits, medications, and careful observations. I learned to notice subtle changes, slight paleness, moments of fatigue, the way her hands shook. Each small sign became a source of concern, yet I also discovered resilience in her quiet determination. Mom was fragile but unyielding, teaching me about courage without words. I found myself reflecting on my own life choices during those quiet evenings. Years of career ambition and solitary pursuits felt trivial in comparison to the simple act of caring for her. I understood that presence mattered more than achievement, empathy more than efficiency. Time became precious, measured in small gestures, shared smiles, and moments of silent understanding. Dad struggled in his own way, retreating to work or taking long drives. I occasionally confronted him, seeking acknowledgement of our shared concern, but he remained guarded. Still, I sensed his worry beneath the stoic exterior, like a silent river running deep. We were all learning to navigate fear in our own imperfect ways. One evening, Mom confided in me about her memories of illness, how it had always frightened her. I listened quietly, holding her hand, feeling her vulnerability and courage simultaneously. Her openness shifted something in me. I realized that acknowledging fear didn't weaken us. It connected us, bridged the distance between generations, and allowed compassion to flourish. I began journaling more frequently, trying to untangle the web of emotions that bound me. The words were private, honest, and raw reflections of love, frustration, hope, and fear. I read fragments aloud to Mom occasionally, watching her respond with gentle nods and quiet smiles. Those moments became our secret rituals, private affirmations of connection amidst uncertainty. Weekends were the hardest, with Dad away and the apartment quiet. I became more vigilant, ensuring Mom had meals, medication, and company. Even small tasks carried weight, reminding me of the delicate balance between independence and dependence. Through these routines, I discovered patience I hadn't known I possessed. Friends reached out, asking how things were, and I responded cautiously, not wanting to burden anyone. But James, my oldest friend, offered practical support, helping with errands and providing moments of normalcy. I realized that human connections, careful, reliable, understanding, were essential lifelines in these times. Even in the midst of fear, there was comfort in shared presence. At night, when the city lights glimmered beyond the windows, I sat beside Mom, sometimes holding her hand. We didn't speak much. Words often felt insufficient against the weight of reality. But our shared silence became a language of its own, intimate and sustaining. Through it, I understood that love often manifests in quiet, unnoticed acts. The week drew to an uneasy close, with minor improvements in Mom's condition. She laughed softly at a story about her early career, and I felt a glimmer of relief. But underlying tension remained, a reminder that health was fragile and uncertain. I realized that hope was not certainty, but a willingness to endure with presence and care. I spent late nights reflecting on the subtle transformations in myself. I had become more observant, more patient, and more attuned to emotions I had previously ignored. Caring for Mom was changing me in ways that were both exhausting and enlightening. I understood that love, resilience, and empathy could coexist with fear and uncertainty. And slowly, I began to feel a deeper appreciation for the fleeting moments we shared. The weekend arrived with a heavy quiet, the city buzzing beyond our windows while the apartment felt suspended in time. I noticed Mom moving slower, pausing by the window as if summoning strength from the sunlight. I joined her, silently, watching the street below, remembering walks with her when I was younger. Those memories contrasted sharply with the fragile present, and I felt a pang of guilt for lost time. Dad came home late, exhaustion etched in every line of his face. We ate dinner in near silence, careful to avoid tension, though the unspoken worry lingered like fog. He excused himself early, leaving me alone with Mom, and I realized the weight of responsibility rested squarely on my shoulders. I checked her medications, arranged appointments, and made lists of tasks for the week ahead. James stopped by unexpectedly, bringing groceries and a cheerful attempt at levity. His presence was a relief, a reminder that I was not carrying this burden alone. We talked quietly in the kitchen, sharing mundane stories to mask the underlying anxiety. But even in his company, I remained acutely aware of Mom's fragility and my own limitations. Later that evening, Mom spoke about her fears openly for the first time. "I hate feeling like I'm a burden," she said softly, eyes glistening with unshed tears. I knelt beside her chair, taking her hand in mine, trying to convey understanding without words. "It's not burdening us, Mom," I whispered. "We're here because we love you, always." She nodded, a small but significant gesture, and I felt a flicker of connection that had seemed absent. We spoke at length, revisiting childhood memories and moments that had shaped both of us. Our conversation was interrupted only by the soft hum of the city beyond the glass. I realized that sometimes acknowledging vulnerability strengthens relationships more than avoidance ever could. The days passed slowly, marked by routine and careful observation. I noticed small victories, Mom eating a full meal, a hint of color returning to her cheeks. I documented these moments quietly in my journal, a chronicle of resilience and fragile triumphs. Each entry reminded me of the delicate interplay between care, patience, and hope. One afternoon, I found myself in the living room reflecting on our family dynamics. Mom's illness had shifted the balance, revealing both strengths and weaknesses in unexpected ways. Dad's stoicism, once frustrating, now seemed protective, a method of coping with helplessness. I understood that everyone navigated fear differently, and my judgment mattered less than empathy. James encouraged me to step outside briefly, reminding me that self-care was not selfish. I walked to the nearby park, inhaling fresh air and noticing the subtle life around me. Birds, rustling leaves, the distant laughter of children. The simplicity of it contrasted with the tension I carried, reminding me that perspective was essential. Even small escapes brought clarity and allowed me to return home with renewed patience. Returning, I found Mom sitting by the window, knitting quietly as if nothing was wrong. Her calm exterior hid the uncertainty she felt inside, but I admired her grace under pressure. We exchanged brief smiles, a shared understanding that words could not capture fully. I realized that presence often mattered more than conversation, that being there silently was itself a gift. Later that night, Dad admitted he had been avoiding his own feelings, fearing they might overwhelm him. We spoke candidly, acknowledging that none of us had all the answers. I felt a sense of relief in honesty, a recognition that vulnerability did not diminish responsibility. Through these conversations, our family shifted slightly, navigating the storm together, if imperfectly. The following days brought minor setbacks. Mom's fatigue increased, and I struggled to balance vigilance with the need for rest. I grew acutely aware of my own emotional limits, yet I refused to withdraw. Each challenge reinforced the importance of patience, careful observation, and silent support. I began to notice beauty in small routines, the measured sip of tea, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock. One morning, Mom asked me to read aloud from a book she had cherished in her youth. We sat together, her hand resting lightly on mine, as words from the pages carried us into shared memories. For an hour, the world outside ceased to matter, replaced by narrative, connection, and fleeting peace. It was a moment of quiet intimacy, fragile yet profound, reminding me of the power of presence. I reflected on my own life choices, work, friendships, ambitions, all seemed insignificant against the backdrop of mortality. I understood that time with loved ones was precious, irretrievable if wasted. Mom's illness had forced a reevaluation of priorities, a realignment of values I had long ignored. I resolved to invest in connection, not distractions, recognizing that love was an active, daily practice. Evenings were spent in shared silence, the three of us together without need for conversation. Dad read, Mom rested, and I wrote, each of us contributing to the household rhythm. The quiet felt sacred, a subtle reassurance that despite uncertainty, we remained united. In these ordinary routines, I discovered extraordinary lessons about resilience, empathy, and emotional fortitude. I noticed that small gestures, adjusting a blanket, offering tea, listening without interruption carried immense weight. Mom's appreciation was often silent, conveyed in nods or fleeting smiles, yet deeply felt. I internalized these moments, understanding that care was an accumulation of small, consistent acts. Through this, I felt a connection to her that words alone could never fully articulate. At night, I often sat by the window, reflecting on the delicate balance between fear and hope. The city lights shimmered below, indifferent to our struggles, yet offering a sense of continuity. I understood that life was composed of impermanent moments, fragile yet meaningful. The challenge was to navigate them with patience, empathy, and unwavering presence. Morning light spilled across the apartment, softer than usual, almost hesitant. Mom sat in her favorite chair, a blanket draped over her shoulders. I approached quietly, careful not to disturb the fragile rhythm of the room. Her eyes met mine, a flicker of recognition and gratitude passing silently between us. Dad joined us for breakfast, his usual stoicism tempered by a gentle softness. We ate slowly, savoring each bite more as an acknowledgement of shared presence than hunger. James had stopped by briefly, leaving a note that read, "You're doing well. Keep going." I smiled at the gesture, realizing the support network extended beyond the apartment walls. Later, Mom asked me to help organize old photographs, each frame a memory steeped in history. We lingered over each picture, her hand brushing mine, unspoken words carried in gentle touches. The past felt vivid yet distant, a tapestry of experiences that shaped the family. I recognized the importance of remembrance, of honoring life's continuity even in the shadow of illness. We spoke about future plans cautiously, never committing to more than the next day. Mom expressed small hopes visiting the park, a quiet dinner out, reconnecting with neighbors. I reassured her gently, emphasizing that our family would adjust together, one step at a time. Even the smallest aspirations carried profound meaning, a reminder of life's persistence. Evening brought a calm I had not anticipated, the apartment quiet, but not empty. I watched Mom rest, her breathing steady, and felt a rare serenity settle over me. Dad read beside her, occasionally glancing at me with an expression of quiet approval. It was an ordinary scene, yet the weight of previous months made it extraordinary. I reflected on my own emotions, fear, fatigue, frustration, each tempered by moments of clarity. I understood that caregiving required balance, that tending to others demanded tending to oneself. I acknowledged my limitations without shame, recognizing that love was an ongoing effort, not perfection. Each day offered new challenges, yet also opportunities for subtle connection and understanding. That night, I sat by the window after everyone had gone to bed. The city hummed softly below, indifferent yet steady, a backdrop to our personal trials. I thought about conversations, silences, shared meals, and the small victories of daily life. Time felt fragile, yet its value was undeniable, measured not in hours, but in moments. I remembered my own past detachment, the years I had taken for granted. Now, awareness replaced ignorance, and intention replaced apathy. Mom's struggle had revealed the fragile beauty in ordinary family life, in daily routines. The lessons were subtle but permanent, shaping the way I approached relationships forever. I made a quiet promise to be present, to listen deeply, to act with patience and empathy. I understood that healing was not linear, that some days would feel heavier than others. Yet, even in difficulty, there was room for love, connection, and fleeting joy. The balance was delicate, but it existed, and we clung to it like a lifeline. In the late hours, I found Mom awake, staring at the ceiling with an unreadable expression. I sat beside her silently, offering only presence, the kind that requires no words. She turned slightly, a faint smile touching her lips, a subtle acknowledgement of our bond. It was fragile, yet meaningful, a testament to endurance and quiet understanding. We spoke briefly about small hopes for tomorrow breakfast at the cafe, a short walk, phone calls to friends. Plans were tentative, yet each one carried significance, an assertion of life continuing despite uncertainty. I realized that hope was not grandiose or sweeping, but quiet, incremental, and persistent. It was found in ordinary gestures, mutual support, and the courage to keep showing up. I reflected on my own growth, the shift from detachment to attentive care, from observation to participation. The journey had been painful, yet invaluable, revealing emotional depths I had previously ignored. I understood that love was active, a deliberate practice requiring time, patience, and self-awareness. Through struggle, we had discovered connection, even if imperfect and incomplete. Finally, I returned to my journal, documenting thoughts, feelings, and subtle victories. Words could never fully capture the nuances of daily life with Mom, but they offered clarity. I wrote of small triumphs, her laughter returning, shared meals, quiet conversations, and moments of tension. Each entry was a record of persistence, a testament to the quiet resilience of family bonds. As night deepened, I looked at Mom sleeping peacefully, the apartment cloaked in calm. I understood that certainty was impossible, yet presence offered profound reassurance. Time with loved ones was fragile, each moment precious, never to be taken for granted. And while the future remained uncertain, there was solace in knowing we faced it together.